what is our true nature? Our true nature by its nature is creative. And what that means is that when you have the realization of your nature, you embody and express yourself creatively. And the more you do that, the deeper your realization of your nature. It's a positive feedback loop that creates light upon light upon light. That's why it's unbelievably important to connect with your voice in whatever medium. I'm doing it by speaking with you or by writing my books. Other people do it by dancing or singing or writing poetry, or even the way you wash dishes or hold yourself. Quantum physics is saying we are creating our experience moment by moment.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. You know if it's on your skin, you're drinking it, right? I know you've heard your skin is your largest organ. It's basically a big sponge. And if you are reading ingredients and mindful to the things that you put on your body, you definitely want to check out my newest favorite product. It's Farrow products. Farrow is animal-based. It's based on pig lard. Pigs are the most biologically alike creature out of any creature on the planet to human beings. Yep. That's why they use pig parts in transplants, like pig heart valves and all these different things. Their skin is almost molecularly identical to ours. This company, Farrow, is amazing. Their products are simple, their ingredients are minimal, and they're chemical-free, based on traditional wisdom, work, and nature. This stuff saved my skin. It just absorbs really well. It doesn't clog my pores. My skin looks amazing. I love it. I couldn't get it on my store fast enough. Check it out on my e-store. It's F as in Fournier, ARROW, and use my coupon code Aphrodite. You can save some money, and make sure you look for my episode with the founder of Farrow, Charles Mayfield. Enjoy. Did you know I have an e-store? That's right. I have put together all of my favorite things that I use every day, things like my red light therapy, the biogeometry jewelry and products, Farrow skincare, Sebin Solis skincare, my favorite unbelievably powerful, gorgeous Vogel cut crystals, my water filter, all my supplements, all that stuff and more. These are things I use every single day, and I believe so much in that I want to help get them out in the world and share them with you. So the best part is, you get coupon codes. If you want to try these products yourself and experience how they work and how they're magically important, then use my coupon codes because you'll save some money. And you know what else? It's a great way to support me too. I get a small commission on some of these items because I'm bringing them to you. So it's a triple win. And these beautiful companies get out there in the world, which they need to do. We need to be part of the solution, everybody. Focus on the things that we can do. And these are the things we can do by drinking clean filtered water and eating good food and getting to sleep and having harmonizing music to help control our frequencies. All these things are positive things that we can do every single day because the solutions and the world that we want to create comes from us, our everyday choices, the things that we do, we listen to, we say, we expose ourselves to, and we feel. And that's what this show's about, helping you dial all that in, get that lifestyle dialed in, mind, body, and spirit. So thank you for supporting me and supporting the items on my e-store. Now let's get to the show. My friends, you've probably heard that we create our own reality. But can you really wrap your brain around that? I know that's really hard for me sometimes when things happen that get me frustrated or upset or angry or even scared or whatever. It's like, I would not create this intentionally. So what is going on here? Help me wrap my brain around how I actually create my reality, whether it be good or bad. Well, I've got the perfect guest for us to learn from today, Paul Levy. Wow, this guy is incredible. He describes himself as the wounded healer, and he is that indeed. He talks about something called Wetiko, and Wetiko is a Native American term that is actually in all forms of religion and philosophy and theology. They might call it a different name, but it's basically evil. It's the dark force, and he talks about it's the basis for a lot of his work, and it's basically a parasite that feeds off us and benevolent souls and benevolent energies, and it's a parasite in order to live. So when we become aware of this mind virus, this Wetiko, this evil force, this potential that is very, very real and out there in the world, and I don't have to tell you that it's quite active right now in 2024. It's really coming to surface. The first step to achieving change and improvement and evolving is awareness. So we're aware that it's there. How do we combat it? What is the antidote to Wetiko? Well, Paul shares some of his very important wisdom with us today. And he is an author. He is in private practice. And he loves assisting people awaken to their dreamlike nature of reality. He's got many books, and the one that I've been working my way through is The Quantum Revelation, a radical synthesis of science and spirituality. I got to tell you, it's taken me forever to read this book because it is deep. It is deep, 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 very deep. And I have to just kind of sit with it and just kind of reread things a few times. But let me tell you, my friends, it is important. It is important because this is really what this game of life is all about. Is understanding and getting out of the monotony and the everyday drama that's happening around us, that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to a hill of beans. It's not that important. But what is important is the eternity of our soul and the evolution of our soul and sharing love on this planet and being connected and embodying our true nature, our true selves, and owning our power. Right? Owning our power. I love that Paul talks about that today. He talks about taking back our voice and not listening to the lies of Wetiko, the lies of the deceiver, and how it keeps us small. So if you have been feeling small or feeling kind of like a victim, like things are happening that you can't control or affect the outcome of, this show is for you. You're going to love this show. So let's now join Paul Levy. And welcome back to the show, everybody. Paul Levy, welcome to Awakening Aphrodite.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you.
All righty. Well, people already got the introduction of you and some of your backgrounds. Do you want to just give us any thoughts, a synopsis of what brought you here today with us?
Yeah, for sure. Well, my background is kind of one of a kind in that, it's not the traditional background, in that I was just, a normal, happy, healthy kid growing up, pretty much. And then there was this incredible trauma that I experienced, and it was an emotional trauma. And it wound up that my father was a really sort of, to put it in simple terms, was sort of this bad guy. And it just created, the whole point is that it created enormous suffering for me when I was getting out of college. And how I dealt with the suffering was going inwards and assuming the position of the witness. And after doing that intensively every day, maybe 4 hours a day average, that's not even counting all the studying, that was just meditating, I had this life-transforming spiritual awakening, which got catalyzed by getting hit by a bolt of lightning while I'm sitting in meditation. It just ignited in my brain. And I knew nothing about Kundalini at that point. I was 24. So that was over 40 years ago. And within hours of getting hit by that bolt of lightning, I began having the realization that, oh my God, this is a dream. We're all like dreaming up into materialization each and every moment, this physical universe. And I was so ecstatic at what I was realizing that it freaked people out, because from their point of view, it was like I had a radical personality change. So I immediately got thrown in a mental hospital and diagnosed, oh, you're mentally ill. And I knew I wasn't. I mean, it was made very clear to me that I was having a spiritual awakening. And so, I don't need to go into the story, but the next over a year, maybe 18 months, I was a free agent. So maybe 3 or 4 other times I got thrown in hospitals and always told, oh, you have this chemical imbalance, this mental illness, you'll need to be on medication the rest of your life. And I just knew they were idiots. They had no idea what was happening. And the fact that it was so clear to me that I was having an awakening, that's what saved my life. But the tragic part is that it broke apart my whole family. My parents, bought into the psychiatric point of view because in their mind, psychiatrists are authority figures. And, so the tragic part, my parents died over 20 years ago. The rest of my family excommunicated me, thinking I'm just in denial of my mental illness. And all the while, I've been like creating this body of work, and there's a worldwide community that's formed around my work. And, so I've just had to deal with that tragic part of having lost my family. But in essence, I was recognizing the dreamlike nature, but another way of describing it was I was having this direct encounter with archetypal evil that had come through my father. He was just the instrument for this transpersonal evil to come, into the world, and I was the recipient. And then when I was in psychiatry, I began to recognize, wait, it's the same evil, but it's coming through the system of psychiatry, because I couldn't believe how insane and abusive the psychiatric system was. And this was in the early 80s. And in some ways it's gotten better. In some ways it's gotten way worse. And then I began to recognize, like iterations of a fractal, the same evil that played out through the person of my father, through the system of psychiatry, was playing out through the greater body politic of our species. And I recognized, oh, and that evil is interfacing with and not separate from me, that's somehow reflecting something in me. And so it took me over, like, I don't know, 12 years of going to therapy and doing psychedelics or doing Buddhist practice, studying Jung, connecting with my dreams, making art, everything and anything that would alleviate my suffering. And then I became integrated enough that I realized, oh my God, I have something to offer as a result of going through this experience, as if it was this initiatory ordeal. And so, the hospitalizations were between 81 and 82. In 94, I began teaching 30 years ago, and I haven't had to do anything else since. And so that's a little bit about my background. And I'm really fortunate because there are people who get like an insect getting caught in a spider's web, who get caught in the psychiatric system. And it's tragic because so many of them might be having these shamanic initiatory ordeals or spiritual awakenings. And if they're like recognized and supported, they're able to connect with these gifts that they can then offer to the world. And it almost killed me. Like I said, it destroyed my family, but I was fortunate enough to not get caught in the whole psychiatric thing, and to be able to, deepen my integration, my awakening, and bring forth a body of work. I've written 6 books that are helping people all over the world and are medicine for people. So that's just a really thumbnail sketch of my background.
And what would you attribute that to? Like you're a survivor. I mean, the odds of you pulling through it, to your point, so many get caught in that. And then, the endless cascade of medications and each one affecting the other, and they just lose their function. They lose their sovereignty. I mean,
Right.
what would you attribute that to, that you
Yeah.
were able
Well,
to?
the fact that I was having such overwhelmingly crystal clear spiritual experiences, and it was made super crystal clear to me that I was awakening, and it couldn't have been more obvious, let's put it that way. And so when these like doctors were saying, oh, you have this mental illness, they're diagnosing me, I'm diagnosing them, going, oh, they're incredibly stupid, they're incredibly asleep, they're unbelievably ignorant. And the fact that the experiences just like I'm having an experience right now that I'm talking to you on Zoom, and there's no one who could talk me out of that. This is what I'm experiencing. It was like that, it was so obvious. And that's what saved my life, really, because if it wasn't so clear, it was so seductive because there were benefits. Oh, we'll give you money, all this stuff if I agreed to their point of view, the psychiatric point of view. And it would have killed me. But from the psychiatric point of view, it would have been, oh, wow, great, another successful treatment. I would have been dead. Where, by like taking their prescriptions and, identifying with, oh, I'm mentally ill, that would have completely destroyed my life. And from their point of view, that would have been a success. I mean, it was insane, but I see now that that wasn't a mistake. It was like a descent into the underworld.
Yeah.
And the underworld for me had a lot to do with psychiatry, and it blew my mind, just the incredible, like I'm saying, the insanity of what pervades the mental health system,
I'm curious, what would you say is like the percentage of people in that system that you think are going through somewhat of a similar scenario as you, and like a shamanic initiation, or, and they're really not really mentally ill per se, but they're just caught in that system?
Right. I mean, I don't know, but it could be a very high percentage. Let's put it
Yeah,
that way.
that is scary
And
stuff.
because so many of psychiatric symptoms are just expressions of some sort of inner conflict, or we've internalized the family dysfunction, and like shamans were acting it out, and then we become the identified patient, and, oh, you're mentally ill, to have the whole rest of the family get off scot-free of having to look at their own collusion.
The black
And
sheep.
so, yeah, I think there, I mean, at least a certain percentage of people who have taken on the identification of being a mentally ill person are actually have gotten drafted into a shamanic initiatory process, and it was a failed initiation, and they got stuck, and it's tragic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think what's interesting too is that it seems to be a common theme for enlightenment that there's a struggle. There's always the struggle before. I mean, there's always the suffering, and
Yeah.
people.
Well, one of my teachers says, one of these, these great enlightened beings from Tibet, a Tibetan Lama who's a holder of this profound lineage, and he said to me one day, he goes, Paul, these enlightened beings in Tibet all throughout history, they didn't become enlightened because things were going great. No, they became enlightened because there were all these obstacles, and that catapulted them into realization.
Yeah. And then, okay, so then let's bring it more to current time. You got into quantum physics and your 6 books. And this is very interesting to me to learn that, because quantum physics, this is going to be a very educational for me, Paul, because this is really out of my wheelhouse, this whole area, but I think it's fascinating. And frankly, it kind of is the whole deal. When the more you get into it, you're more like, yeah, this is kind of important to understand this dynamic. I mean, I love this idea of how it's kind of a dream. And I really want to bring it down to earth for people, though, because, we hear these things that we create our own reality, and, there is no objective reality, and then the observer effect and all these things. But let's bring it to like boots on the ground. Okay. So quantum physics, like, explain to us in a nutshell, like just, the mom bringing her kid to kindergarten today. What is quantum physics, and how does that affect our lives?
Before I even get to that, for a minute, I just want to create context.
Please.
Because I've written 3 books, that there's what's at the bottom of the insanity that's going out, that there's a mind virus, just like, people hear about the supposed, COVID coronavirus, and that's like a physical virus, at least it supposedly is. There's a correlate in the dimension of mind, and by saying a mind virus, and you'll see how this ties into quantum physics, because quantum physics is offering us the medicine for the mind virus. By saying there's this, the indigenous people call it the Wetiko mind virus, and it's at the bottom of the collective madness and the collective evil that's playing out. And all that a mind virus means, it's not something that people should be afraid about, is that the origin of our collective madness is to be found within the psyche. Okay, now this is where it ties into quantum physics, because before quantum physics came on the scene, like about a century ago, the classical physicists thought of this world as being separate and objective, and they were just passively studying it, trying to understand, how does it work? What's it made out of? What are the laws? And so quantum physics comes into the world and into our minds early 1900s, and it empirically proved that there's no such thing as an objective world. And particularly what they mean is that the idea of an objective world is just that, an idea. There's no correlate in actual reality to the idea of an objective world. And to be more clear, they empirically proved again and again that the act of observing the world actually influences the world you're observing. Right now, just think about that for a moment. That's the description of a dream. When you're in a night dream, the way you're actually perceiving the dream affects the dream you're perceiving and the way it manifests, because it's all just your own reflection.
You're the dreamer. Yeah.
You're the dreamer. It's all
Yeah.
you're inside of your own psyche. Okay. So quantum physics, by proving, oh, wow, we as perceivers are actually an essential part of the equation of the universe. And by actually observing, we're influencing the universe we're observing. What that means in simple terms is that the act of observation is creative. Okay. And that's the rabbit hole that you go into, and it changes everything, because to see that, that's actually pointing at the incredible creative agency and creative power that each one of us have by the way we observe and by how we interpret reality. This meaning we place on the ink blot of reality affects the way it'll manifest. So in other words, we have this enormous creative power to create our own experience of ourselves and of the world. There's no one else doing that to us. Whatever's happening is happening. We are not, creating that in one level. We are creating how we react to that. What's the meaning we place on that? How do we interpret that? We are thereby creating our experience of ourselves and of the world. And that's this epoch transforming insight when you realize that, because all of a sudden you begin to realize, wait a second, we are creative beings. Not only are we creating our experience of ourselves and of the world, but when we hook up with each other, with other people who are also realizing that, we can actually change the waking dream, change the world in a way that's not new age woo-woo magical thinking, but that's to actually have the realization that we can consciously step into and participate in our own evolutionary process. So quantum physics, by actually these insights that I'm just briefly describing, this is the medicine for the mind virus. Because in the mind virus, one way of describing it, it works through the projective tendencies of the mind, because we're always projecting onto the ink blot of the waking dream. But the mind virus, by working through the projective tendencies of the mind and our blind spots, because the mind virus is a form of blindness, psychic blindness, that doesn't know it's blind, and it actually thinks it's seeing, and it thinks it's seeing more clearly than those who are actually awake and clearly seeing. And so the mind virus, and I can really explain this, I mean, that's what I do in my books, is the mind virus, we literally entrance ourselves. We put a spell under ourselves, we brainwash ourselves, we hypnotize ourselves, and that becomes a self-reinforcing feedback loop in which we identify. Like, I'll give you an example. Every spiritual tradition is pointing at this mind virus. Now, remember, quantum physics is the medicine, and I'll explain more about that. But in the Bible, they talk about this mind virus, the Wetiko mind virus. It's in the apocryphal text. It got edited out of the canon of the real Bible because Wetiko, the mind virus, was on the editorial board. I make that point. But in the apocryphal text, they talk about the counterfeiting spirit. And the counterfeiting spirit, that's the mind virus. That's
Well, it's like the great deceiver, like Satan is known as the great deceiver.
Satan, Diabolos, the devil, Lucifer, all of those are descriptions of the mind virus. Okay. And in the apocryphal text, they say this counterfeiting spirit, it puts us on, it impersonates us, right? It offers us a false version of ourselves. Oh, I'm limited, I'm traumatized. And if we aren't awake in that moment, and we then identify with its version of ourselves, oh, I'm wounded, I'm a victim of abuse, I have problems, then it has us. Then it can manipulate us and control us, And if think about what I'm just describing. Yeah. So this mind virus can't steal our soul. It has no power in that way at all, but it can trick us into giving our soul away. Okay. And then we identify with its version of ourselves. We identify with who we're not.
Wow.
We give ourselves away. we disconnect from our creative agency, because the mind virus has no creativity, but it plugs into our creativity and it turns it against us. That's a recipe for madness. And that's Wetiko. And Wetiko is a collective psychosis. This is the diagnosis that's happening all around the world. This is at the bottom of the collective madness and the evil that we're all like colluding with, to the extent that we're not aware of the mind virus.
But if everyone got conscious and became aware and got their sovereignty back from this mind virus and Wetiko, would Wetiko still be able to exist? I know that could probably never happen, of course.
Yeah.
But,
Well, the thing is, even when you save everyone, I mean, that's a great thought experiment. But the idea being that even if there's a certain critical number, like the 100th monkey phenomena, or in the Bible, they talk about 144,000. It's a symbolic number, just like when you are baking bread. If there is like, sufficient of the yeast in the bread rises. If there is sufficient number of us who are actually awakening, you could say it to the dreamlike nature, to our true nature, to seeing the quantum non-local field, which contains and interconnects all of us. There are a lot of different ways of saying the same thing, seeing our own shadow. The point is that it's the individual. It has to happen, not collectively. It's not something we're just going to create new laws or, but it's a process of awakening that's happening individual by individual. And any one of us in this moment having the realization of whatever you call it, the dreamlike nature, the quantum field, our nature as love and compassion, any one of us doing that might be the very 100th monkey phenomena that catalyzes an awakening in the collective field,
Well,
and
the
that's what
collectivism.
Jung was he was so switched on to that. And he, again and again, he has different ways of saying exactly that,
And the collective is made up of the individuals.
Exactly.
Right? So one at a time. And that's why every single person is important. I mean, how many times do we hear, what can I do? Just me, one person. And it's like, well, if everybody said that, we're screwed. If everybody,
exactly.
Yeah. But if everybody said, yeah, me, and then me, and me, and me, and me.
Because the spell that people are under in this day and age is that, I'm helpless. What can I do? I'm only one person. And then if you assume that position, the mind virus has you. Then you're actually part of the problem, and if you collapse into despair and depression and all that, no, then you're not helping at all. You see what the powers that be, or you could think of what this mind virus doesn't want us to remember, is the enormous, the unimaginably vast creative agency that each one of us has. And that's what quantum physics. So I point out, you see, in Tibetan Buddhism, because I'm a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, there's this amazing thing called the hidden treasures. They're called terma. And terma, like the lineage that I do practice to, for 40 plus years, this is the way they keep their tradition. There are these hidden treasures that are hidden in the multidimensional fabric of the universe. And once the community gets a little bit stale or one-sided, this new treasure will get discovered by the person who's fated to discover it. And it'll be, whatever, a prayer, a teaching, a blessed object. Think about it like in our dreams. When we get one-sided, well, the unconscious compensates. It shows us the other side to get us more in balance. That's what these hidden treasures are. And it's a real thing. It's not just a fairy tale. Scholars study this type of stuff. This is how the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism that I practice, this is how it keeps itself fresh over centuries. There are continually these new treasures, and every spiritual tradition has some sort of idea of hidden treasures that you discover in the earth, and a lot of these are hidden within our minds. Okay, so at the right time, when we get one-sided or asleep and the creative tension gets so intense, all of a sudden people will, it's like all of us, oh, I just heard a new song.
A revelation.
Yeah. It's a revelation, right? Yeah. That's a very simple way. Now, so I point out that quantum physics is a modern day analog to this Tibetan Buddhist idea of a terma, of a hidden treasure, that it came into the world and into physicists' minds. And it's actually offering us the medicine, because quantum physics, to answer your question, it's showing us the dreamlike nature. And of course, the typical corporatized academic, the physicists, they're not trained to recognize this.
Yeah.
But I'm not a physicist. I'm just a curious person. And so I've written a book, I think you even have it, that's pointing out that, like what quantum physics is actually showing and proving is that we're having a collectively shared dream. And as more and more of us actually awaken to that, just like we can awaken in our night dream and have lucidity, we can come together with other people who are having a lucid dream in the waking dream, and we can dream the dream different. We can dream ourselves awake. That's what's available to us. That's what all of this is about. That's what my whole work is about.
I love that so much. Okay, so I know you're a big fan, like one of your mentors, John Archibald Wheeler, the physicist, about asking the right questions. The question is, what is the question? The issue of how to ask the question and when it's asked plays an important role in what answers we get. So what have been some of the questions, Paul, that you've asked to write your 6 books that have given you these answers, these downloads? And
well, in essence, and this is one of, I think it was Schrodinger who won he won the Nobel Prize. He was saying that, the key, most foundational question in all of science is, who are we? And that's the really fundamental question, because, the idea of the questions we ask, the order in which we ask them, how we set up the experiment in physics and how we interpret the data and the questions we ask, all of those determine the answers we get back, because we're actually participating in conjuring up the answer. So when I heard you say, or other people say, oh, I create my own reality. Well, the question is, who's that I?
yeah,
Most people, when they say that, they're deluded. They're still unconsciously identified with this reference point in space and time, with an ego. That's not creating our experience. That's part of the illusion. So the real question is, who's that I? And that's where quantum physics really promotes itself to becoming a spiritual path. And if I could just explain that even in more depth. So before quantum physics, physicists conceived of this world as existing objectively, right? Well, as soon as you conceive of the world of existing objectively, that's only half of the equation. The other half, you've conceived of yourself as being a subject in relation to that objective world, right? And so there's the object and the subject and the gap in between, and they're separate, right? And so if I think the world is objective, I've created myself as an ego. If I think of myself as a separate self, because that is the mind virus. That's the essence of the mind virus. It's identifying with thinking you're a separate self, which you're not. You're interconnected and interdependent with every part of the whole universe. And then you spend the rest of your life defending and protecting this separate self, which doesn't even exist. But if you think of yourself as a separate self, then you're immediately conjuring up the world as being objective. The point is, the world being objective, which is a thought, it's an idea, has no correlate to reality, and our subjective experience of existing as a separate self, there are these illusions that mutually reinforce each other. Okay, that's David Bohm, the great physicist, calls this an illusion generating illusion. It's one illusion that generates a host of other illusions. And so the idea of an objective world, the subjective experience of being a subjective ego, reciprocally reinforce each other ad infinitum. And that's Wetiko. But as soon as you recognize, like quantum physics is pointing out, oh, there's no objective world, then what happened to me as a subject? If I'm a subject, I have to have an object to be in relationship with. But if there's no object, what happened to the subject? You see, and that's the question, who am I? That's what quantum physics is actually pointing at.
So fascinating. I mean, this really, I just have to take a breath and meditate on that one. In your book, The Quantum Revelation, you give a great analogy of like a kitten looking in a mirror.
Right.
And at its reflection. Can you share that with the audience? Because I know you're going to explain it much better than I did, just to help us wrap our brain around what you're talking about?
So it's like when a kitten is looking in a mirror and not realizing she's seeing her own reflection.
Yeah.
So then she reacts to the reflection as if it's another kitten. And the reflection just immediately, it mirrors that back. So then she reacts to that. And then that can go on for infinity, for eternity. And that's us, in a way, being conditioned by and reacting to our own projections. Okay. And I'll give you like a real example that I think can help to illuminate this. And this is see what I'm pointing at. This is the solution to all the myriad world crises, but it doesn't make any difference at all. It won't have any effect unless we take it online, unless people realize it, because quantum physics is saying that we are participating in the creation of our universe. So when you have this realization, it's not enough just to intellectually understand it. You have to actually take it into your mind, into your heart, full-bodied, and live your life in that way. And that's where you become an agent of change. So the example is this: imagine being in a night dream, right? And you're in a night dream and you're holding whatever point of view you're holding in that night dream, right? Say, for example, oh, this world I'm in, you're not aware that it's just a night dream. You, like most night dreams, you think, it's real. This world I'm in is objective. Well, if that's the point of view you're holding in that night dream, well, the night dream, which is nothing other than this reflection of your mind, is going to give you all the evidence confirming to yourself that this world you're in is objective. Now you have evidence. Oh, wow, I have all the evidence I need that this world is objective. So I'm going to get even more entrenched in my viewpoint that the world is objective. The more fixed you become in your viewpoint, the more the world, which is just your own dream, i.e. your own mind, will then continually just prove to you and confirm to you, giving you all the validation you need to show the correctness of your viewpoint. And the more that happens, the more you're entrenched in your viewpoint ad infinitum.
Confirmation bias, right?
Yeah, but to the nth degree, to the point where what I'm describing is that you've hypnotized yourself, you've bewitched yourself, you've put yourself under a spell, you've hypnotized yourself. That's the malady that our species is coming from. We're all these creative geniuses, but to the extent we don't know it, we actually outsource our creativity. The powers that be are more than happy to use our own creativity against us. Remember, Wetiko has no creativity. It turns it against us, and in a way that's killing us, and in a way that we're getting suffocated, like a cocoon is being woven around us by our own unconscious creativity, and we're unconsciously enacting collective suicide. Evidence is endless. It's all around us. And what I'm pointing out is, hey, the solution is we already possess the solution. We already have it. We are it, but we don't realize it, and that's what I'm trying to help people, in a way, to snap out of the spell, and particularly connect with other people who are snapping out of the spell. And it's what I call the sacred power of dreaming, to put our sacred power of dreaming together in a way where we can dream ourselves awake. And that's evolutionary. And that's, like I said, that's what this is all about. And there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Okay, so what about the person, Paul, that we're creating our own universe, that's listening to this conversation or watching on YouTube, and they say, this is ridiculous. I would never create this kind of life. What would you say to something like that?
Or like, like maybe one side of it would be like, oh no, I'm not creative at all. Paul thinks people are creative, but I'm not creative. And I would point out, well, you're so incredibly creative that you're using your creativity to create the experience of not being creative. That's how creative you are. Okay. And so the idea is say if somebody, for example, like I think a creative way of answering your question, if somebody came into my office and shared a dream they had just last night, and the dream was exactly what's happening in the world. Yeah. Oh, with like the pandemic, and our freedoms are being taken away, and fascism is creeping all over the world, and and there's a surveillance state, and they're wanting to digitize money to like control us, and just they're having a nightmare, and the nightmare is what's happening in our world. Yep. And they would say, well, how would you interpret this dream? Right. And to get to the essence of the dream, I would say, well, clearly you're not consciously in touch with your creative agency, and you're outsourcing it, And the powers that be are using your own creative power against you. So what the dream is showing you is how important it is for you to actually consciously become acquainted and familiar and access your own creative genius. And instead of just giving it away and outsourcing it to the outer authorities, for you to connect with who is the real authority, who's the dreamer of this dream. And it's not the ego, it's some part of you that interfaces with something higher than who we imagine ourselves to be. And so that would be an example when somebody said, oh, I'd never dream up this life or this dream.
Yeah. Or
right.
these terrible things that happen in the world.
Yeah. You would never do that consciously. But one of the ways, like I was saying, Wetiko, it's a form of blindness. When we turn a blind eye, when we look away, we're colluding with Wetiko, and we're colluding with our own victimization. So what this involves is really seeing the part we play in the evil that's playing out in the world. We're all playing our part in our individual lives by, I'm avoiding looking at this, I'm marginalizing that. Well, yeah, that's a micro iteration of what's happening in the world,
And then what about then the Wetiko within ourselves? Like we're projecting it out there, like those guys are bad or that's bad. Like I would never do that. But right. I mean, Wetiko is in us, right, Paul? I mean,
exactly.
How do we reconcile that?
If somebody, that's a key point. I'm so glad you brought that up, because if somebody says like, oh, that person, you see, the thing about Wetiko, think about it like archetypal, transpersonal, or just say a higher dimensional energy that can possess a person at any given moment. They become taken over. They become the incarnation of that energy, sort of like, for Christians, here's Christ. He was the incarnation of the light. He was just completely the embodiment of the light. Well, think about the opposite of that can happen. Somebody can unwittingly or wittingly become an instrument for the dark. Sure. And so because Wetiko works through the unconscious, sort of blind spots in us, somebody could get taken over and then enacted. The point is, if I see that person and I think, oh, they have Wetiko and I don't, no, that point of view is showing I'm under the spell of Wetiko, because Wetiko is the separate self. If I recognize, however, oh, they're taken over in this moment by Wetiko and they're a dream character, what that means, they're a reflection of that part of myself, then all of a sudden, oh, they're reflecting that part of me that's taken over by Wetiko, because we all have Wetiko in potential. It exists in the collective unconscious. And what you're saying, the psychological sort of the mechanism that underlies Wetiko is projecting the shadow. And interestingly, in his work, Jung talks about, he calls projecting the shadow the lie. And who's the liar but the devil? You see, all of this is interrelated. And how does projecting the shadow work? It's amazing when you see it. If I'm not in touch with a part of my own shadow, what do? I try to exterminate it. I try to get rid of it. How do I do that? I externalize it. I project it outside. And then if in a dream, a night dream, because this is the waking dream, so it's a way of understanding it, if I'm like projecting out a part of myself into the dream, will be somebody who carries my projection. They're embodying my own shadow. And now I have evidence. You see, the evil's out there. And so then I'm unconsciously identified with the light. The evil's out there. And what eventually happens? I try to destroy the carrier of the evil, because I'm actually playing out in the outside world the very inner process of trying to destroy my own darkness. So I'm actually playing out unconsciously the inner dynamic that started the whole shadow projection. Now I'm playing it out in the world. And by doing that, I'm actually possessed by the very evil that I'm trying to destroy.
But then how do we recognize it or reconcile it?
Rather? Yeah, it's to recognize. The whole thing is to recognize that darkness, that evil that we're trying to destroy out there, is a reflection of our own darkness, And I mean, I see so many spiritual people who are identified with the light and love, and that's beautiful, but they're not dealing with their own shadow and they're projecting it out on whoever.
Well, like spiritual bypass.
Spiritual bypassing, exactly.
But how do we just, the idea would not be to just passively tolerate it either. I mean, all these, the child trafficking and organ harvesting and, like, so how do we then, like, okay, not objectify it? That's them and not me. I'm all virtual signaling and stuff, What do we do then, Paul? Like when we encounter the Wetiko evil?
I've coined a phrase, spiritually informed political activists. And
Okay.
it's cross-pollinating, having spiritual awareness, which is, oh, there's no separate self. The child trafficker, yeah, they're actually a reflection of that part of me that could potentially do that, because we're all potential criminals under the right circumstances, and I'm not, but that's not who we are. Our nature is love and compassion. But that's the spiritually informed part, to recognize, oh, they're not separate, but the spiritually informed political activist means you engage, you do something. You just can't sit on your pillow and do mantras and cultivate compassion and let the abuse happen. No, that's to be absorbed in your own narcissism. The point is that our inner process is playing out in the seemingly outer world. And the way to deal with and integrate your inner process is to actually be participating in external reality, and in whatever way. Like, I'm doing it by writing books or giving interviews or talks. That's not everybody's way. Another person's way might be just to be a good husband or wife or a parent or a kid. We all have our particular way of doing our dharma, but the important thing is to get in touch with how you're being called to be in this world, to be in service, and to have the courage to do that.
Yes. And I would say, just not turning that blind eye to what you're seeing out there that is the Wetiko, the evil, and I like that you're saying engage, participate, like do something about it.
Right. In whatever way. Like, some people go to protests or go on, whatever, however they do it, or
speak up. And I know we're getting toward the end here, but you have a really interesting story about back to the beginning of your synopsis of your being thrown in the mental institution and all this crazy stuff. But I heard you say that, there's always a gift of the initiation, right? Which you went through your initiation and your gifts and your downloads and all your books and your revelations. But you found your voice. It seems like it was a gift. Can you share that with us? Because on this subject, a lot of people are, even masks literally quieted our voices, and people don't want to speak up because it's causing, people don't agree, and they're causing waves, and there's fighting, and there's, so the voice, and, and look, freedom of speech. I mean, censorship, where our voice is being taken. So
exactly. Sure. So one thing, when Wetiko is in the field, it's not safe to speak. It severs our vocal cords, and think about the climate in today's world. For us to speak out, against this or, whatever. I'm not going to get specific because I've learned anything I bring in politically alienates half of my audience, but, there's incredible censorship. And I think it's really important to be hyper aware of that. A lot of people I know aren't, because it's become like normalized. But yeah, it's never been like this before, that if we then give voice to a point of view that's distinct from the agreed upon, consensus point of view that the powers that be want us to think, we get censored or demonetized or deplatformed. It's dangerous, Now, here's the thing. Just the idea of finding one's voice, etymologically, it's related to a number of words, which is very interesting, because there is an inner figure. You could call it, the inner guide. Another word would be daimon, genius, the muse,
your soul,
your angel. When something has like millions of names, it's pointing at it has a miracle quality to it. And the idea is, we all have this daimon, and I'll use that word for a particular reason. You'll see why. And the translation of daimon, it's the inner voice, the guiding spirit. And if you actually develop a conscious, get into intimate relationship with this daimon, it'll help you find your genius, connect you with your creativity, help you find vocation, your voice, and your calling, what you're here to do. But if you turn away from it and think about a typical shamanic initiatory process, the would-be shaman gets called, and if they don't have the courage, or, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, that's beyond me, and they don't assent to the calling, that's when the would-be healer and shaman or teacher gets sick and can even die. But the idea is to assent to the voice, to have the courage and to trust, well, the same sponsor of the voice is the sponsor of everything I need that's going to support me in actualizing what the voice is about. And and then you've connected with your inner voice, which interfaces with your outer voice, and you find your creative voice. Because one of the best ways of protecting and healing from Wetiko, the mind virus, is, you could say it like, oh, to connect with your true nature. Okay, great. But what does that even mean? That's such a cliche. Well, what is our true nature? Our true nature, by its nature, is creative. And what that means is that when you have the realization of your nature, you embody and express yourself creatively. And the more you do that, the deepen your realization of your nature. Ad infinitum, it's a positive feedback loop that creates light upon light upon light. Okay. And so that's why it's unbelievably important to connect with your voice in whatever medium. I'm doing it by speaking with you or by writing my books. Other people do it by dancing or singing or writing poetry, or even the way you wash dishes or hold yourself. That's every moment.
Decorate the house, whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Remember what I'm
creativity.
saying. Quantum physics is saying we are creating our experience moment by moment. That's what I'm talking about, because being creative, cultivating, connecting with our true nature. And another way of describing our true nature, what is our true nature? It's love, it's compassion. Okay. Seeing the dreamlike nature, seeing that we're interconnected, stepping out of the illusion of the separate self, seeing the non-local field, that all of this, when a synchronicity happens, you begin to realize, oh, there's actually, because that's in essence what quantum physics discovered, that there's no difference between mind and matter, that this universe, that what they try to find is, what is the microstructure? What are the building blocks of this physical world? And the deeper they went down in smaller scale, they didn't find anything physical. They found consciousness. That's why I keep on saying this is a collectively shared dream. And as more of us awaken to the dream, we can connect with each other, and we can, we can inspire to co-inspire each other and activate our collective genius and dream ourselves awake. And that's completely within the realm of possibility.
Yep. Just got to get enough people to think it.
Maybe even one other person, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's just so inspiring. I got to tell you that this, like, to me, I actually feel better now as a result of this conversation talking to you. It's like something is resonating with my spirit, my cells. Like this I'm trying to articulate this. I literally feel better after this conversation. So there's got to be some kind of truth to it, that there's something within me is hanging on to, and it's giving me life. It's giving me energy.
Right. And I'm just an ordinary person, but I know that when I give these talks, like, I don't ever memorize or prepare. No, I just trust that I plug into the creative source of the universe, and it comes through me. Just like when I write my books, I become an instrument, and you have the recognition, oh, there's some sort of energetic, vibratory, resonant thing that's coming through Paul that feels really true. And I would imagine that's why you
feel good. It feels good. Like it's a very, very subtle, but I'm very much aware of it. So I just wanted to share that. Okay, so as we get toward the end here, I know that a big message of yours is you want people to feel hope, and that to not fall into despair and pessimism, but to keep the faith and continue to lucid dream the shared waking dream we're having to its highest unfoldment. Do you want to speak to that as we get to the end here, to give people a sense of optimism?
And that's exactly what quantum physics is saying. And an example, when they tried to find what is the elementary quantum particle, and like I was saying, it wasn't anything that was made of matter, it was made of mind. And one way of understanding this, before these elementary particles or these quantum entities were observed, they existed in a state of potentiality, like in each and every potential state they could ever exist in. And at the moment of being observed, that potentiality becomes actualized into one particular manifestation, and all the other potentialities just vaporize back into the void, like into like this parallel world. And that process happens at each and every moment. But the point is this, is that even if one of those potentialities, and this is a quote of one of the fathers of quantum physics, even if one of those potentialities is highly, ridiculously unlikely, it could manifest this very next moment. Okay. And to bring that into the real world, well, the fact that our species could actually awaken sufficiently in order to avert the impending multiple catastrophes we are conjuring up, we're like sorcerers' apprentices who are like conjuring up this magic, but we don't know. Yeah, it becomes black magic. And it's like we pull the wool over our own eyes. We trick ourselves out of our own mind. That's the black magic. And but when the point is that it's within that quantum potentiality for this very moment to be the moment that you wake up, or I wake up, or enough people sufficiently wake up, that immediately, instantaneously will like, download into the collective unconscious, and making it easier for other people to wake up, and that can go viral, and that can catalyze a global awakening in which our species awakens. Quantum physics, it says, that is completely and totally within the realm of possibility. And if you're not envisioning that, then what in the world are you thinking? Then you're under the spell.
Yes. And this is a major theme. We all have to remember that you got to keep hope and believe something's possible. I mean, I like this quantum entities, the fact that there's potentialities, that everything has potential in the quantum field. And maybe, and to your point, it might not be likely, I mean, even me finding, this house that I now found after 4 years of looking, and people would tell me, you're never going to get this, that, and the other, the criteria I had. You're not going to find it. Those kind of thing doesn't exist. And I'm going to admit, there were days when I had dark days and I thought it was true. Okay, maybe I'm, being too, not realistic,
Right.
But I had to keep that possibility, Paul, because I kept telling myself, because I believe very deeply in Great Spirit. And because I know it's true, because I feel it in my body. But I had to just keep believing that all things are possible, even if to our limited mind it might not be realistic or probable. There's a difference between possible and probable. And what do you know? I found
one way of holding that is that, in the atemporal, from the atemporal point of view, like outside of time, way back for the last 4 years, you've been looking and everybody's saying, no, you can't find that, and you haven't found anything. But, in the atemporal realm, that house with you living in it already existed. And, in the same way that us, as like awakened beings, which is our nature of love and compassion and being creative and being in service and seeing the interconnectedness, that part of us that's awake already exists right now. And the more we actually envision that, or imagine it, or step into it, this is what Christ was meaning when he says, whatever you pray for, to believe you already have it and it shall be yours.
The faith of a mustard seed, right?
Yeah. Like in the same way, he doesn't say, seek ye first. What he does say, he says, seek ye first the kingdom and everything else will be added. So the idea is like prioritize, the truth and your nature, and you'll get everything to bring you to that. What he doesn't say is, oh, when you find the kingdom, you'll get everything. No. And, he's making the point, believe you already have it now. And it shall be yours. Because if you think, oh, I hope I get this house, but I don't have it now, you're focusing on the lack.
Yep. And I had those moments. I mean, I'm just going to admit, I had those days when and I did do that. But then I had those moments when I really did feel it. Like, and to your point, like I literally would say to myself, it already exists. It's out there. I just haven't found it. And I would wake up every day and be like, I'm one day closer to finding it, even though today wasn't the day. But good, I'm one day closer because I'm going to find it. And sure enough, it happened.
Right, right. No, totally. And so, just the idea that each of us, we've already awakened outside of the temporal dimension. And, it's like in Tibetan Buddhism, one of the main practices is, you envision the deity, in this body of light, it's symbolic of your enlightened nature. And then you step into it and then you merge with it, and you, moment by moment, you imagine that you are that deity. And they make the point going, you're not just fabricating that. No, you're doing this activity in your mind, this imagination, because that is the truth, that you are that deity and you've just forgotten. You see, so the thing which is interesting is that people talk about, forgetting and amnesia. There's a word, anamnesia, and I love this word. It means unforgetting. And that's what we're in the process of doing, of unforgetting. And this is the shamanic initiatory process. Think about it. The shaman gets dismembered. They get cut up, and all of their arms and legs and parts of their body, they're disassociated. And then when they go on the shamanic journey and they retrieve their soul, what happens? They remember. They put themselves back together and they unforget. And what they unforget, what they remember, it's not a temporal event. Oh, I'm remembering what happened when I was 2. Yeah, that's part of it, but something deeper they remember. They remember who they are. That's atemporal. That doesn't exist in time.
And that's unforgetting.
Yeah. Just unforgetting. I just love the anamnesia.
So cool.
That's the word. You put an an in front of amnesia. And that's the actual translation of the word,
So fascinating. Paul, this is just incredible. Could talk to you for hours. Obviously, you've got 6 books. I've got a lot of reading to do. So working my way through this one. But any final thoughts as we close it out today?
Yeah, well, on the one hand, I mean, what comes up in the moment is just the incredible importance of compassion. And don't forget to include yourself in compassion, because people ask me, oh, how do I wake up in the dream? And in Tibetan Buddhism, they'll talk about awakening, and they'll always say it's a combination of 2 factors, of emptiness and compassion. Well, emptiness, that's when you're in a dream and you have lucidity and you realize, oh, this world I'm in, though it seemed real and objective and separate, it's actually not separate from me. It's not separate from my own consciousness. That's the emptiness. But they say if it's true awakening, it's always co-joined with compassion. And so people ask me, oh, how do I wake up in the dream more? And, one very simple answer that every one of us can do, all day, is to just continually try to cultivate compassion for all beings, and particularly, not to forget yourself. So that's one thing. And then, people ask me about, well, how do I see the dreamlike nature? And in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a practice every practitioner does called pure perception, where you just go about your life and you imagine this is a dream that you've become lucid in. And you just hold that point of view. It becomes like an established habitual point of view. And I'm not saying you try to fly off a building. No, but you just recognize that everybody you meet is a dream character, is a part of yourself, and that you're in a dream, and that you've recognized that. That's what I mean when I say this is a collective dream. We're all dreaming this, but we've been conditioned to dream it out of our trauma and to create a nightmare. But just like in a night dream, when you have lucidity in a night dream, and other of your dream characters also are lucid, and you hang out and you realize, you trip out and you realize, oh my God, this dream is manifesting in such a nightmarish way because we've been programmed and conditioned to dream it up out of such lack and scarcity and woundedness and trauma and abuse. And we can change that. That's inside of us. So that would be one thing. And then also to not forget the incredible importance of being creative, of finding your voice in whatever medium and being creative, and in being in service, that we're here to help each other. That's the idea in Buddhism, the Sangha, the community. And, in Christianity, they have there's the mystical body of Christ. It's the exact same thing, that we're all on the same side and we can help each other. And particularly then it becomes contagious, that activating our own love, our own compassion, our own creativity, that can go viral, and that can change everything, you know.
I love this message so much. I can't wait to listen back to this, Paul. How can people find you, Paul?
Well, if people are interested in the dreamlike nature, if they want to awaken in the dream, they should go to awakeninthedream.com, and that's my website. And it's not monetized. I mean, yeah, people can buy a book, you know, I'll autograph it or book a session, but there's no paywall or anything, because I just, you know, this is medicine. This is, you know, I just
Yes,
want to
it
get
is.
this out. And there's a ton of interviews like this and books and yeah, just whatever articles and stuff I've
Yeah,
written.
it's a lot.
You know, I just want people to have access to it. So yeah, that's how they would get it.
Okay, and that's in the show notes, everybody. Well, an incredible discussion. I'm tremendously grateful for you and your work and your courage and your perseverance and wow, and helping all of us dream ourselves awake. I'm looking forward to it. This show, as you know, is Awakening Aphrodite, and this is right in line with what we're trying to do, Paul. I love it so much, and taking our agency back. It's so empowering, and it's such a beautiful message. I love your Buddhist influence is very clear, and it's just very empowering and encouraging. And I think this is something, good medicine, the world needs right now, with all the fear and the, you know, the worry, you know. So thank you for this medicine, Paul.
Oh, for sure. No, I so appreciate the invite. Thank you so much.
Okay, everybody. We'll see you next time. Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes, and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com, and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FITAMYTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also FitAmyTV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.